The human female stood before our high command with shackles still welded to her wrists. Blood stained her torn uniform. Her left eye was swollen shut from interrogation. And yet, she smiled. I should have known right then that we were all going to die. My name is Vorth 97, Senior Intelligence Analyst for the Krellian Star Empire. For 3 cycles I had studied these creatures called humans. I thought I understood them. I was wrong, dead wrong. And now, as I dictate this final report from my escape pod, drifting through the void, while our home fleet burns behind me, I realize the magnificent horror of what we unleashed. But let me start at the beginning, when we thought we were so clever. The human's name was Mira Kane, captured during the raid on Proxima Station. Age 26 standard years. Born into slavery on the mining world of Kepler 442b. Her parents died in the uranium pits when she was 8. She survived by stealing food scraps and sleeping in ventilation shafts. At 16, she killed her first overseer with a mining pick. By 20, she had organized 3 separate slave revolts. When the Terran Defense Force finally liberated her world, they found her leading a resistance cell of 2,000 freed slaves. They offered her a commission. She accepted. Within 4 years, she rose to captain of the destroyer Defiant. We captured her ship during the Battle of Wolf 3. Out of her crew of 300, only 12 survived. She was not supposed to be one of them. Our interrogators worked on her for 7 days. They used every technique in our arsenal. Neural probes, chemical enhancement, psychological manipulation, pain amplifiers that could drive a Krellian warrior mad within minutes. She gave them nothing, not one piece of tactical intelligence, not a single code, not even her real name, until the very end. When Fleet Admiral Cross Prime Alpha finally brought her before the High Command, she looked like she had been fed through a matter recycler. Twice. Her uniform was scorched and torn. Dried blood crusted her face. She could barely stand without swaying, but that smile. Oh, that terrible knowing smile. You want to know something funny? She said, her voice hoarse but steady. You think you caught me? The Admiral's 4 eyes narrowed. Explain yourself, human. I have been trying to get captured for months. She laughed, and the sound made my chatten crawl. Do you have any idea how hard it is to lose a space battle convincingly? I had to make it look good. Couldn't just surrender. Had to make you work for it. You lie. But I could hear the uncertainty in Cross Prime Alpha's voice. Check the wreckage of my ship. Really, check it. You will find the hull breaches were placed with surgical precision. Every critical system failure, timed to the second. I needed to make sure I survived. Needed to make sure my crew didn't. Her voice cracked slightly on the last words. For a moment, the mask slipped, and I saw the pain underneath. Then it was gone. They volunteered, by the way. Every single one of them knew this was a one-way mission. The silence in the command chamber was deafening. I felt my breathing apparatus wheeze as the implications crashed over me like a solar flare. Why? Admiral Cross Prime Alpha's voice was barely a whisper. Because you needed to believe you had won something valuable. Because you needed to think you had broken me. Because humans are really, really good at being underestimated. She tilted her head, and that smile widened. Tell me, Admiral, when was the last time you updated your security protocols? My blood turned to liquid nitrogen. I activated my personal communicator, frantically trying to reach central security. The channel was dead. All channels were dead. About 7 days ago, I'm guessing, Mira Kane continued conversationally. Right around the time you started your enhanced interrogation. See, that's the thing about neural probes. They work both ways if you know what you are doing. And I have had a lot of practice being inside other people's heads. Fleet Admiral Cross Prime Alpha stepped backward, his 4 arms reaching for weapons that weren't there. We never brought weapons into the command chamber. Why would we? This was the most secure location in the entire fleet. Every time you tried to break into my mind, I was mapping yours. Learning your codes, your protocols, your deepest fear. She flexed her shoulders, and the shackles around her wrists simply fell away. The metal hadn't been cut or melted. It had been dissolved from the inside. Did you know that Krellian biosignatures can be perfectly mimicked with the right combination of pheromones and electromagnetic fields? I have been broadcasting as a trusted crew member for the past 4 hours. The lights in the command chamber flickered and died. Emergency lighting bathed us all in hellish red. In the distance, I could hear the distinctive whine of our own weapon systems powering up. You see, the thing about being born in chains, Mira Kane said, her voice cutting through the alarm klaxons that had started blaring, is that you spend your whole life learning how to break them. And once you figure out how to break your own chains, breaking everyone else's becomes a hobby. The main display screen flickered to life, showing our fleet deployment. 300 warships arranged in perfect defensive formation around our command vessel. As we watched in horror, ship after ship began turning their weapons toward each other. My people have a saying, the human continued, completely ignoring the chaos erupting around us. Give me a place to stand, and I will move the world. You gave me something better. You gave me access to your entire command structure. The first explosions bloomed across the screen like deadly flowers. The battlecruiser Wrath of Krellios opened fire on the destroyer Night's Edge. Return fire from a dozen ships converged on the heavy carrier Stormbearer. In the space of 30 seconds, we lost more vessels than in the previous year of war. Stop this! Admiral Cross Prime Alpha lunged toward the control console, but Mira Kane was already there. For someone who could barely stand 5 minutes ago, she moved with liquid grace. I'm afraid I can't do that, she said, her hand hovering over the main command panel. You see, I made a promise to my crew, to everyone who died believing in this mission. I promised them that the Krellian Empire would remember the price of underestimating humanity. Her fingers danced across the controls with impossible precision. More ships began firing. The formation dissolved into a lethal ballet of destruction. How did you learn our systems? I found myself asking, my voice mechanical with shock. She turned those human eyes on me, and I saw something that made my carapace itch. Pity. I didn't learn them, Analyst 497. I have been watching you learn them for the past week. Every time you accessed a file, every time you cross-referenced intelligence data, every time you tried to understand human psychology, I was there, riding along in your neural pathways like a virus you never knew you had. The blood drained from my face, or what passes for blood in my species. That's impossible. Our neural networks are completely isolated. Are they? She smiled again, and this time it was genuinely amused. Tell me, how many times did you review my psychological profile? How many times did you analyze human behavioral patterns? How many times did you connect to the central database to compare my responses with previous human subjects? Every time. I had done it, every single time. And each connection, each query, each desperate attempt to understand our enemy had been an open door. Humans are natural hackers, she explained, as if giving a lecture to students. We don't just hack computers, we hack people, situations, expectations. We turn your own assumptions against you. You wanted to know how humans think. Congratulations. Now you know exactly how humans think. The explosions on the screen were getting closer. Our escorts were falling back, but there was nowhere to run. We were surrounded by our own fleet, and they had all been turned against us. What do you want? Admiral Cross Prime Alpha's voice was broken, defeated. What? Mira Kane looked genuinely surprised. I don't want anything. I already have everything I came for. Your fleet is destroying itself. Your command structure is in chaos. Your homeworld defense grid just received orders to stand down for routine maintenance, and in about 6 hours, the largest human battle group in the history of our species is going to translate into this system. She leaned against the command console like she owned it, which I suppose she did now. The war is over, Admiral. You just don't know it yet. Something cold slithered down my spine. You planned all of this. From the beginning. From before the beginning, she corrected. Did you really think the Battle of Wolf 359 was random? We have been maneuvering you into this position for 2 years. Every skirmish, every victory, every defeat, and all designed to bring you here, to this moment, to this choice. What choice? But even as I asked, I knew. Surrender or die. Simple as that. Your empire falls today, one way or another. The only question is how many of your people survive to see tomorrow. The command chamber shuddered as nearby explosions sent shockwaves through our hull. On the display I watched the heavy cruiser Doom's Hand ram the battle carrier Endless Night in a kamikaze attack that shouldn't have been possible. Both ships vanished in a ball of plasma that lit up the local star chart. You are insane, Admiral Cross Prime Alpha whispered. No, Mira Kane replied, her voice suddenly tired. I'm thorough. There's a difference. She touched something on the console, and the fleet-wide communications channel crackled to life. Attention all Krellian vessels. This is Captain Mira Kane of the Terran Defense Force. Your command codes have been compromised. Your weapons are under human control. You have exactly 10 minutes to abandon ship before I turn your own guns on your hulls. This is your only warning. The channel closed. In the terrible silence that followed, I could hear my own heartbeat pounding like a war drum. 10 minutes, she repeated, settling into the Admiral's command chair like she had been born to it. I suggest you use them wisely. And that's when I realized the most terrifying truth of all. She wasn't bluffing. 9 minutes and 30 seconds. That's how long it took for Admiral Cross Prime Alpha to break completely. I watched it happen in real time. The proud military commander who had conquered 17 star systems and enslaved 43 species crumbled like a house of cards in a solar wind. His 4 arms shook uncontrollably. His breathing apparatus wheezed like a broken air recycler. And his eyes, all 4 of them, darted around the command chamber like trapped insects, looking for an escape that didn't exist. Please, he whispered. The word came out as a broken prayer. My crew, they have families, children. Mira Kane didn't even look up from the tactical display. She was orchestrating the destruction of our fleet with the casual efficiency of someone conducting a symphony orchestra. A tap here, a swipe there, and another Krellian warship would turn its guns on its neighbor. Funny thing about families, she said, her voice disturbingly calm. I had one too. Before your people turned my parents into mining equipment. Before they worked my little sister to death in the thorium extraction tunnels. She was 6, by the way. 6 years old when she collapsed from radiation poisoning. Her fingers never stopped moving across the console. On the main screen, the heavy destroyer Bone Crusher was systematically dismantling the cruiser formation designated Talon Wing. The explosions painted the void in shades of orange and white. 8 minutes, she announced. I found my voice, though it came out as a croak. The evacuation pods. Will you target them? For the first time since her revelation, she paused, actually stopped what she was doing, and looked at me. Really looked at me. What kind of monster do you think I am? Analyst Vorth 97. I think you are exactly the kind of monster we created, I replied honestly. It was probably going to get me killed, but at this point, what did I have to lose? She laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. Fair point. No, I won't target the escape pods. This isn't about slaughter, it's about sending a message. A very specific, very loud message that the Krellian Empire will remember for the next 1,000 years. Admiral Cross Prime Alpha stumbled toward the evacuation alarm. His shaking hand slammed down on the emergency broadcast button. All hands, abandon ship. Repeat. All hands abandon ship immediately. This is not a drill. Proceed to evacuation stations with maximum urgency. Throughout the fleet, similar announcements echoed across communication channels. I could see the life pod signatures beginning to separate from the doomed warships like seeds from a dying plant. 7 minutes, Mira Kane said. Then, almost conversationally, Did you know that humans have a saying about teaching people to fish? Give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. Your empire never learned that lesson. What do you mean? I asked, though part of me already knew I wouldn't like the answer. You take, you conquer, you enslave, but you never teach, you never elevate, you never build anything, except monuments to your own cruelty. She gestured toward the tactical display, where our once mighty fleet was tearing itself apart. This is what happens when you build an empire on fear, instead of respect. Eventually someone comes along who isn't afraid anymore. The deck plating beneath our feet shuddered as another nearby explosion sent shockwaves through our hull. Emergency klaxons wailed like the death songs of mechanical banshees. But Mira Kane sat in that command chair like she was lounging in her living room. The human fleet, I said suddenly. You mentioned a battle group translating into the system. How many ships? Enough. She smiled that terrible smile again. But honestly, after today, we probably won't need them. See, that's the beautiful thing about turning an enemy's strength against itself. Very efficient. Very permanent. Very human. 6 minutes. Admiral Cross Prime Alpha was frantically trying to establish communication with the remainder of his command staff. Most of them were already in escape pods, but a few senior officers remained on various ships, trying desperately to regain control of their weapons systems. It was pathetic to watch. These were some of the finest military minds in the Krellian Empire, reduced to helpless observers, as their own technology betrayed them. How? I had to ask. How did you learn to manipulate our neural interfaces so completely? It should have been impossible. Should have been, yes, but you made one critical mistake. She turned in the chair to face me directly. You assumed that human brains work like Krellian brains, that our neural pathways follow predictable patterns, that our consciousness operates within normal parameters. She tapped her temple with one finger. But here's the thing about being born in chains, about growing up in the worst conditions imaginable, about having your mind broken and rebuilt from childhood. It changes you, makes you adaptive in ways that comfortable people can't understand. The lights flickered again, and I realized she was still drawing power from our main systems. Even now, with the fleet falling apart around us, she maintained perfect control. Every torture session, every neural probe, every attempt to break me just gave me more access to your networks. Pain is just information, analyst, and I have been very good at processing information. 5 minutes. Something cold settled in my thoracic cavity. The other human prisoners, the ones we captured over the past 2 years, were they all volunteers? Some of them, others were just unlucky. But every single one of them gathered intelligence. Every interrogation, every torture session, every moment of suffering was building toward this moment. Her voice hardened. You want to know the difference between humans and Krellian? When we sacrifice, it's for something bigger than ourselves. When you sacrifice, it's usually someone else's life for your own comfort. On the tactical display, I watched the super-heavy battleship Wrath of Eternity turn its main guns on the command carrier Divine Mandate. The resulting explosion was visible even through our heavily shielded viewports, a miniature star being born and dying in the space of seconds. 4 minutes. The evacuation was proceeding faster than I had expected. Krellian military doctrine emphasized survival above heroics, so most crews were abandoning their ships without trying to fight the compromised systems. Smart choice. Really, there was no point in dying for hardware. The human battle group, I said, returning to my earlier question. When they arrive, what then? Will they accept Krellian's surrender? Mira Kane considered this. That depends entirely on how your people respond to what happens here today. If your High Council is smart, they will realize that this war is over and negotiate terms. If they are stupid, they will try to regroup and continue fighting. And if they choose to fight, then we will do this again and again and again until your empire understands that the age of Krellian expansion is finished. She leaned forward in the command chair. Here's what you need to understand, analyst. This isn't about revenge anymore. This is about evolution. The galaxy is changing, and your people can either change with it or become extinct. Your choice. 3 minutes. Admiral Cross Prime Alpha had given up trying to regain control of the fleet. He stood at the main viewport, staring out at the destruction with the vacant expression of someone whose entire worldview had just collapsed. My lord, I said quietly, perhaps we should make our way to the escape pods. He didn't respond immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible above the background noise of failing systems. 47 years, he said. 47 years I have served the Empire. I have conquered worlds. I have broken species. I have turned entire civilizations into slave colonies. He paused. And this one human female has undone it all in less than an hour. Technically, Mira Kane interjected. It took me about 3 years of planning. The execution was just the easy part. 2 minutes. The deck lurched violently as something massive exploded nearby. Through the viewport, I could see the fragments of what had once been the battle cruiser, Endless Victory, spinning away into the void like metallic confetti. Time to go, I said, grabbing Admiral Cross Prime Alpha by one of his arms. The escape pods won't wait forever. But he shook me off. No, I will stay with my ship. It's the honorable thing to do. Mira Kane stood up from the command chair, and for a moment she looked almost sympathetic. Admiral, there's no honor in pointless death. Your crew is alive because you made the right choice. Don't throw that away for the sake of outdated pride. Why do you care what happens to me? He asked. Because dead martyrs inspire rebellion. Live reformed leaders inspire peace. She gestured toward the escape pod access corridor. Your empire is going to need people who understand what happened here today. People who can explain to the High Council why continuing this war would be the stupidest decision in Krellian history. 1 minute. The final evacuation warnings echoed through the ship's communication system. In the distance, I could hear the distinctive hiss of escape pods launching, carrying the last survivors away from the doomed vessels. Admiral Cross Prime Alpha looked at Mira Kane one final time. If I live through this, if I make it back to Krellius Prime, what message should I give the High Council? Tell them that the age of empires is over, she replied. Tell them that humans don't make good slaves, but we make excellent allies. Tell them that the choice is theirs, but they only get to make it once. The Admiral nodded slowly, then turned toward the escape pod corridor. Come, analyst, let's see if we can survive long enough to deliver that message. 30 seconds. As we reached the escape pod bay, I turned back to look at Mira Kane one last time. She had returned to the command chair and was calmly watching the final moments of our fleet's destruction. What about you? I called out. How do you plan to escape? She smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuinely happy. Who says I'm escaping? The escape pod sealed with a pneumatic hiss, and we were launched into space just as the first human ships began translating into the system. Through the tiny porthole, I watched as massive Terran dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace, their hulls bristling with weapons that had never known defeat. But they didn't need to fire a shot. The Krellian fleet was already gone, destroyed by its own guns under the command of a human female who had been born in chains and rose to command the stars themselves. The last thing I saw before our pod's emergency beacon activated was the command ship's bridge exploding in a brilliant flash of light. Mira Kane had kept her promise to her crew after all. 3 days later, when the human rescue ships found our escape pods, Admiral Cross Prime Alpha was still clutching a datapad containing his preliminary surrender terms. The war officially ended 6 hours after that. With the signing of the Treaty of War, the Krellian Empire agreed to immediate cessation of all slave-taking activities, reparations to affected worlds, and complete withdrawal from all occupied territories. In exchange, humanity offered technological cooperation, medical assistance and protection from other hostile species. It was, by any measure, the most comprehensive military defeat in galactic history. And it had been accomplished by a single human who understood that the strongest chains were the ones we forged for ourselves. Today, 5 years later, I serve as a cultural liaison between our species. I help other Krellians understand humans, and I help humans understand us. It's peaceful work, meaningful work, but sometimes, late at night, I still dream about that smile, that terrible, knowing smile of a woman who was born in chains and learned to break them so completely that she could break an entire empire. And sometimes in those dreams, I wonder if she really died on that command ship, or if she found another way to escape, another impossible plan that nobody saw coming. I hope I never find out, but knowing humans as I do now, I suspect I probably will. Actually, scratch that. I know I will. Because 3 months ago, something happened that made my Chartan crawl with a familiar dread. I was reviewing trade agreements between the Terran Federation and the Norian Collective, when my communication array chimed with an encrypted message. The encryption was Krellian military grade, but the source signature was completely unknown. Curious, I applied my old intelligence protocols and cracked it open. Inside was a single image file. It showed a woman sitting in what appeared to be the command bridge of a massive starship. She was older than I remembered, with silver streaking through her dark hair and new scars crossing her face. But the smile was exactly the same. That knowing, terrifying smile that had haunted my dreams for 5 years. Below the image was a single line of text, written in perfect Krellian script. The chains are broken. The revolution spreads. Tell Vorth 97 that Mira Kane sends her regards. I stared at that message for exactly 47 minutes. Then I deleted it, wiped my entire communication array, and requested immediate reassignment to the furthest possible posting from any human-occupied space. My request was denied, because apparently, 3 days after I received that message, similar images appeared on the personal communication devices of every former Krellian military officer in the galaxy, each one showing the same woman, the same smile, the same impossible promise of freedom spreading across the stars. The High Council panicked. They assumed it was some sort of psychological warfare campaign designed to destabilize our reformed government. They launched a full investigation, deployed counterintelligence teams, and issued stern warnings about human manipulation tactics. They were missing the point entirely. Mira Kane wasn't trying to destabilize anything. She was letting us know that the work wasn't finished. That somewhere out there, in the dark spaces between stars, she was still fighting, still breaking chains, still turning the strong against themselves to free the weak. And judging by the intelligence reports that have been filtering in over the past few weeks, she's been busy. The hegemony of Sathros, those tentacled slavers who thought they were untouchable in their fortress systems, suddenly found their entire enforcement fleet turned against their own orbital platforms. No warning, no negotiation, just systematic destruction followed by a transmission offering freedom to every enslaved world in their territory. The corporate syndicate of Vega, who had been strip mining inhabited worlds for raw materials, discovered that their automated mining equipment had been reprogrammed to target their executive compounds instead of ore deposits. 47 corporate executives died in precisely coordinated accidents that couldn't possibly have been accidents. The Zephyrian Empire, perhaps the most brutal slavers in the galaxy, woke up one morning to find that every shock collar, every neural control implant, every piece of enslavement technology they had ever manufactured had simultaneously malfunctioned. 17 billion slaves were freed in a single day. Each incident was followed by the same message, broadcast on every available frequency in the local systems. The chains are broken. The revolution spreads. Freedom is not negotiable. The galactic community is in chaos. The established order, built on centuries of exploitation and control, is crumbling faster than anyone thought possible. Entire civilizations are having to reevaluate their place in the universe, as the systems they relied on for dominance simply stop working. And at the center of it all, like a ghost in the machine, is a human woman who was supposed to have died 5 years ago. I know what you are thinking. How could one person, even one as resourceful as Mira Kane, orchestrate such widespread disruption? The answer is both simple and terrifying. She's not one person anymore. According to the intelligence reports I have been reviewing, there are now confirmed sightings of Mira Kane on 17 different worlds simultaneously. Either she's mastered the art of being in multiple places at once, or she's done something far more dangerous. She's taught others to be her. The implications of this keep me awake at night, not just because it means the liberation campaigns will continue, but because it represents a fundamental shift in how warfare is conducted. Traditional military doctrine assumes that removing the enemy's leadership will end their resistance. But what happens when the enemy's leadership is an idea that can be transmitted, learned, and replicated? What happens when revolution becomes a virus that spreads through the very systems designed to contain it? I have been studying human psychology for 8 years now, and I think I finally understand what makes them so dangerous. It's not their technology, though that's impressive. It's not their individual capabilities, though those are formidable. It's their ability to transform abstract concepts into concrete reality. Freedom isn't just a word to humans, it's a living force that shapes their actions, their decisions, their very existence. And once they decide that freedom is non-negotiable, they become capable of reshaping the entire galaxy to match that vision. The old empires, the ones built on conquest and control, are discovering that their time is over, not because they have been defeated in battle, but because the fundamental assumptions underlying their power structures have been proven false. You cannot permanently enslave a species that refuses to accept enslavement. You cannot maintain control over people who have been taught to break their own chains. You cannot win a war against an enemy who turns your own weapons against you. And you cannot stop an idea whose time has come. 3 days ago, I received another message. This one came through official channels, bearing the seal of the Terran Federation's Department of Interspecies Relations. It was an invitation to attend a conference on post-imperial galactic governance, scheduled to take place in the Sol system. The invitation was signed by Admiral Sarah Voss, current head of Terran Strategic Operations, but handwritten at the bottom, in what I now recognized as Mira Kane's distinctive script, was a personal note. Time to talk about the future, analyst. Bring your best ideas about how to build something better than what we tore down. I'm scheduled to depart for Earth in 6 days. I have been told that representatives from over 200 species will be attending, including many who were previously considered too primitive or too dangerous for inclusion in galactic politics. The conference agenda includes sessions on voluntary association protocols, consensual resource sharing, and ethical intervention standards. It reads like a fantasy document, a wish list of impossibly idealistic reforms that no serious government would ever implement. But then again, 5 years ago, the idea of a single human destroying the Krellian Empire would have seemed equally impossible. I keep thinking about something Mira Kane said during those final minutes on the command bridge. She said that the age of empires was over, that the galaxy was changing, and that her people could either change with it or become extinct. She was right, of course. She always was. The empires are falling, one by one, not through conquest but through the simple recognition that their time has passed. The new galaxy that's emerging isn't ruled by the strong over the weak, but by voluntary cooperation between equals. It's a beautiful vision. It's also terrifying, because it means that everything I thought I knew about galactic politics, about power, about the fundamental nature of civilization itself, was wrong. But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the greatest victory isn't defeating your enemies, but helping them realize that they don't need to be enemies at all. Perhaps the strongest chains aren't the ones made of metal and energy, but the ones made of assumptions and expectation. And perhaps the greatest freedom isn't the absence of chains, but the knowledge that you have the power to break them whenever you choose. I still don't know if Mira Kane is alive or dead. I don't know if she's one person or many. I don't know if she's human or something else entirely, but I know that she kept her promise. The chains are broken, the revolution spreads, and the galaxy will never be the same. In 6 days, I will sit across a negotiating table from the people who destroyed my empire and discover what they want to build in its place. I suspect it will be something I never could have imagined. And despite everything, despite the fear and the uncertainty and the complete upheaval of everything I once believed, I find myself looking forward to it. After all, it's not every day you get to witness the birth of a new age, even if it was delivered by a woman who was born in chains and learned to break them so completely that she broke the entire galaxy free.